Hey guys, welcome back to the second part of our sculpting video. Okay, so you started already by sculpting your flowers, whether you decided to do that in a mold or you decided to just use the slabs to make your flower. That's totally fine. Okay, we're gonna use some paint and some glaze, or some Mod Podge as it's called, to finish up. If you don't have paint or glaze at home, then you definitely can just be done and have your sculpture kind of have like a raw edge of the clay, and I think that that would look really cool. If you want to add the next step, adding some acrylic paint and some glaze to kind of give your sculpture a little bit of color and to make it a little bit shiny, then you can follow along in the next part of this video and see those steps. Let's get started. Okay, so now my clay is dry, right? So if I pick it up, it stays in one piece together. You really want to give your clay as much time as it wants to dry. All right, when it kind of turns into this white, almost more of like, I don't know, maybe like a crusty texture, that is when it's totally done and dry and ready for some paint. Again, if you don't have paint at home or you don't have glaze at home and you don't want to do this step, then when it's just kind of this like raw edge, I think that it will still be a really cool sculpture. All right, if you did the mold technique, then what you want to do is you want to carefully take your fork again and you want to just gently pull it out a little bit at a time until it can kind of fall off in your hand. Now, when I was doing mine, I didn't let my clay dry all the way. So it actually kind of fell apart into a few different pieces. So that's why you guys really need to be careful when you're taking it out of the mold, right? That it is totally dry. So mine wasn't dry yet, and you can see where it started to kind of break apart around here, right? And it kind of lost a little bit of its shape and some of the smooth edges I had made. So I wasn't really super happy with how this came out, but you know what? I learned from my mistakes, and I know I need to totally let my clay dry before I paint it. This one dried a little bit better, right? So I can see like this white edge, and so I'm going to add a little bit of color to my sculpture. Okay, so I'm going to use a little bit of acrylic paint for my flower sculpture. This is paint that I just got at the dollar store. You can get this at the dollar store if you want. They have different colors, or you can get paint that looks like this, right? Just make sure it says acrylic. Using watercolor or any like water-based paints on this isn't gonna work. It's actually gonna make the clay fall apart, right? Because we added water when we mixed the salt and the flour. So it's gonna kind of loosen up the clay, and it might make it all kind of fall apart if you add any kind of like water-based paint. So I'm gonna put a little bit of paint on my, oh, I have to open it. I'm gonna put a little bit of paint on my extra foil. All right, I'm working on top of a piece of scratch paper so I don't get my surface dirty. And I'm going to just paint a light layer where I want some green, where I want my sculpture to be green, right? And kind of keep your paintbrush nice and light so that you get in all those little cracks and crevices. And be really careful when you're handling this, because your sculpture is still going to be really delicate. All right, so I'm done with my green, right? If you could look, I got as much around the edges as I could. A good rule of thumb whenever you're painting a sculpture or something ceramic, meaning that it's made out of clay, is you don't want to paint the bottom, right? Any part that's going to rest on the surface, you don't want to paint. That's because when you're using clay that you would fire in a kiln, when you glaze it, you can't paint the bottom, otherwise it will stick to the kiln and break. So it's a good habit to just leave the bottom of your sculpture, whatever part is touching the surface, blank. So I'm done with my green. I'm just gonna add a little bit more paint with another color. So I'm gonna add some pink. All right, if you wanna do yours all one color, you can. If you have a bunch of different colors and you wanna make it as bright and vibrant as you can, then you are more than welcome. But I'm just gonna do the same thing with my pink, right? I'm gonna carefully use my brush and gently go in. Make sure I'm getting all those little cracks and details that I sculpted into my clay. Then the last little bit of our sculpture, after your paint is totally dry, it might take like 10 minutes for all that paint to dry, but you just did like a pretty light coat, right? So it should go pretty quick. So let your paint dry totally so it doesn't come off on your hand, and you're gonna grab some Mod Podge. If you also have some like Elmer's glue or something like that, this will work. And this is what we're gonna use to glaze. I got mine at the dollar store. They come in these little bottles if you wanna get it. But if you also just wanna leave it painted and be done, that's fine. What glazing does to a sculpture or to a clay project is it gives it a nice, smooth, and shiny finish. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna paint some Mod Podge, and it's gonna look white, but it's gonna dry clear. So I'm gonna paint Mod Podge all along the top. I'm gonna be careful not to put any on the bottom, right? Because I don't want it to stick to my surface or break my ceramics. So I'm going to put a nice coat of Mod Podge, and then when it's done, I'll show you how when that dries, it looks really cool, clear, and shiny. So I'm just gonna put a little bit on my brush and paint right over where I painted with some color, right? And it's okay, I can leave it kind of white like this. Like I said, it's gonna dry clear. So I'm just gonna keep doing that and cover the whole surface of my sculpture. And it should dry pretty quick. So you'll see as it's drying, right, how the surface is gonna kind of change a little bit. All right, so now my Mod Podge is dried, and you can see it kind of gives like a little bit of like a shiny finish to my sculpture. There's still a few parts that look white because they still have to dry, right? But then that's the last step, and you are done with your sculpture. So that's the end of this video. This lesson. This is the end of our art lessons altogether. So don't forget to send in your pictures of what you guys do. I really want to see how this comes out for you. I'm really proud of the work you guys have been doing, and hopefully I will see you soon. Bye.